So welcome everyone to today's webinar, Why Organizations Choose Microsoft Power Platform, Integration, Security, and AI-Driven Value. Joining me today is Mike Dunmeyer. He's a business solutions architect for the Power Platform on Dynamics 365 here at Planet Technologies. Prior to coming to Planet, Michael spent 11 years working in the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, and for the past 15 years has worked with many organizations from federal to state to defense on building dynamic solutions with Power Platform. Also joining me is Ken Nubler, who is a COTS strategist here at Planet, and he'll be joining in the conversation as well as monitoring the chat. Welcome, folks. We also have a blog that goes along with these sessions. You can check that out in the newsletter. It would have been linked, or at the end of this session, we'll have a link as well. So let's get started. As always, we'll start with a poll here. And just like to get an understanding from folks, and these are anonymous too, so nothing's recorded here. How would you describe your current Power Platform maturity? With organizations here in the DIB, a lot of focus has been put on things like modern work, as GCC High and Azure Gov have matured and progressed. We're seeing a vector towards utilizing Power Platform to replace older solutions. So just go ahead and choose the option there on your screen. And we'll see those results flow in. We've got another question as well, more of an open-ended one on this front. What do you see as holding you back from using the Power Platform? Is it the ability to have the right developers, to trying to find what solutions match to maybe your existing technology issues? Those types of things. It'll be interesting to hear what some of those are. Okay, so as we have those roll in, I'm going to shift over to Mike, who's going to begin the more technical part of the presentation, starting with the business value of the Power Platform.
All right, thanks, Matt. So yeah, we're going to start with business value of Power Platform. I have a couple slides on that before we dive into the technical areas of the Power Platform. And looking here from the first question response, it looks like we have 3 responses in experimental, 1 in the middle there at organized, and 1 at mature. So it looks like there's various maturity levels here in the Power Platform. And before we get into that, I think this is a really good place to start. Why do you want to use a Power Platform? And that's kind of the question that started the call today. So without talking about the technology, a lot of organizations now, we're talking DIB, but I see this in commercial and state and local government and education. I work with all those different verticals, and they're struggling to build these solutions and be successful. We want to modernize. We want to have modern, cohesive applications and interactions and workflows, but there's not the resource space there to be able to do that, or there is a resource space but not the skill set. Matt mentioned there my 11 years at a state agency before I came to Planet. I started working in what was called dynamic CRM at that point at 2005. So I've been in this area for a long, long time, and I've seen it mature from a sales, marketing, and service tool that we used, in state government at that point. We were not selling things. We used it as a rapid application development platform, and it had a workflow engine and it had reporting, but it wasn't as robust. And Microsoft has continued to develop this platform and provide these additional tools based on these types of struggles and challenges that businesses and organizations are having. And now we have the Power Platform is what it became. So the first one on there, changing workforce expectations. I'm getting a little older. I just kind of gave my age away. We have a younger workforce, and even for somebody my age, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, I've been carrying some sort of a cell phone, BlackBerry at one point. We're used to having these mobile, streamlined, interactive, collaborative experiences, and being able to be on the road and still do work from a phone or a tablet or a laptop, and not being tied down to a desk and a computer. A lot of times people are actually even working remotely. The second one on there is a really big one. This isn't anything new. Increased costs for custom application development. We're trying to do more with less, and whether that's less is less people in your organization to build these solutions and maintain them, to just not having the skill set there, or the cost to support that, or to support contractors to be able to help support. So, if you can build these applications more efficiently and more quickly, you have a better return on investment there on those dollars spent. And we'll get into that a little bit more here later. And we actually have an entire Power Platform licensing session. It completely goes into that, where you can start to talk about what is our return on investment on these licenses, and what types of licenses what I need for these various Power Platform tools. The need to become more agile. I've seen this one a lot. I see this no matter what the vertical is I'm working with. As far as customers and projects, traditional solutions, they used to take months to years to deploy, and some still do. Just the fact is that some applications that are built are still, they're enterprise level, and they're huge, and there's a lot of different moving parts, and there may be multiple phases of that, and it may still take a year or years to deploy. But the reason why I really focused on this platform 20 years ago in my career was I saw the value of this, and being able to take development and of applications and workflow processes, and being able to get requirements, or at least loose requirements, from people in the business, and be able to come back and turn around at minimum a proof of concept, maybe later that day, or at the end of the week, or the next week, and to be able to see these projects that took months to years to develop, and may never even get deployed, right? May never even be successful, start to turn into projects that took weeks to months to be developed and deployed. So business strategies change rapidly. I see this in commercial organizations. Somebody maybe comes in and takes a new position. I see it in government. An elected official comes in, and regardless of what that scenario is, change may happen. And those people who change positions, they may bring in their own people to fill positions around them, and these applications that you're building, and these initiatives that are in flight, um, if you're not getting those developed in a period of time that makes sense to see value in them, they may never get deployed, right? Because you may have a change in direction within your organization, or there might just be change in technology within your organization. And I see this a little bit here also, being in GCC or GCC high, there's not always feature parity with commercial, and sometimes we'll have discussions with customers that are in GCC or GCC high. How do we meet this business requirement when it's not available yet in GCC? And because this is an agile platform, sometimes that's on the roadmap, and that doesn't become a question anymore, because that functionality you're waiting for is on the roadmap, and it is available at a certain time in a project. And then you need to scale development efficiently. Obviously, there's your traditional developers, and you generally have a business analyst and a developer and a project manager, and you may have other people involved in there. And you don't always have to do that anymore with the Power Platform. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Also, here the idea of a hybrid development team. A lot of times, the quote unquote developers, the technical team, doesn't know the business and the business processes, and the business isn't technical, but they know their processes, and that's usually where your business analyst comes in to play and be able to get those requirements. But sometimes your IT and support team is not, depending on what your model is, or your support model, they may not be the ones actually developing the application. So there is, the concept there of hybrid development and having citizen developers. Matt, can you go ahead to the next slide, please? So there are a lot more bullet points in here. I'm not going to talk on every one of these, because it's a continuation of those business value propositions, and I think these are very important, to understand why are we looking at this tool or this suite of tools, whatever it is. What are we trying to solve? What are the business problems we're trying to solve? and possibly what are the caveats that we're trying to solve around, and what is our desired outcome. And there are a lot of additional topics here that you could talk about. So one of them is the third bullet there is replacing paper and manual processes. I'm working on a project right now with an organization where they have an approval process. You may have something similar where there's a purchase order. An employee wants to or needs to purchase something. Somebody has to approve that. And this specific scenario that we have, if excuse me, if the purchase is over $500, they need an executive level approval on that also. And then of course there's the process of rejecting it if somebody rejects it, and how many levels of approval there might be based on the organizational hierarchy, etc. And so replacing things like that, and post-it notes on your cue ball, or things jotted down in a notebook, or sending emails to one another with attachments on it, and asking for approval and getting approval, signed, and then the person has to go scan that piece of paper back into a copier or whatever that might be, or digitally sign it, or the old standby, just picking up the document and walking it down the hall to somebody's office and getting to sign it. All those things can do, but they're not efficient, and there's not really an audit history on those. And a lot of times, whenever there's an approval chain involved, there is some sort of auditing and compliance that needs to go along with that. So being able to replace that, and then everything that goes along with that, streamlining those processes and reducing data errors from manual re-entry, especially if you have something like maybe one of your business partners or one of your customers is interacting with you through Power Page as part of the Power Platform here, and sending you information, or like filling out a form digitally and being able to process that. A big one on here, number 4, governance. I saw there was a question that came in before this presentation, so I wanted to take a couple extra seconds here to focus on this one. There is a lot that can be discussed and thought about for governance around the Power Platform. It's so approachable and easy to get started that you don't want to paint yourself into a corner, right? Or other people in your organization. And so there's a lot of things to think about here. What is your support model? If you're in the IT side of this on the call right now, what is your support model to the business who is using this? And if you're in a business, what do you expect your support model to be? Who's actually buying the licenses? Who's maintaining the licenses? Who's deploying and provisioning the environments and the users, and assigning licenses and maintaining security? And the capacity and any additional costs that may go along with capacity. And a lot of times organizations don't think about that until they run into a problem, and then you're out of licenses, or something gets lost because somebody thought somebody else was taking care of it. And especially in DIB space here with compliance and governance and security around this is a really good thing to start with. And for the people who the whoever replied mature, hopefully you already have this because it says govern, but hopefully you'll learn some more about that here. For the rest of the folks that are, in the second and the third level here, I would say this is something very important to take away from this and start looking at this. Governance should be one of the first topics that you start thinking about. And that the third sentence there on that is consider a COP, I ran out of space, but a community of practice, and a COE, a center of excellence. We actually have in our Power Platform, you already own it sessions. We dig into those topics a little bit deeper, and Planet offers a Power Platform governance engagement that includes setup and configuration of the COE starter kit. So this isn't a sales call. If you have any desire to learn more about that, reach out to Matt Nevins. But some things to consider there for community practice is something you could start right now today if you're not already doing it. People within your organization who are involved, and if you are doing hybrid development, start a community of practice if you don't have one. It could be something like a lunch and learn every Thursday, something exactly like what we're doing right now, where somebody has a topic and they're talking about a topic. Maybe have coffee and bagels or whatever it might be, and invite the people who are working within the Power Platform, to come in and provide information and talk about challenges that they've run into and talk about wins that they had. Simple scenarios like, hey, we took this Excel file and turned it into an application in the span of a week, and now we don't have to worry about last person that updated the Excel file corrupting everybody else's data. It's now in a relational enterprise grade database. So things just of that nature, community practice. The Center of Excellence, I have COE Starter Kit there. That is an actual tool that you can get from Microsoft. It's free of charge to download that and install it. But a Center of Excellence as a concept, similar to a community of practice, if you don't have a Center of Excellence around Power Platform within your organization, think about that as a community of practice that is stepped up and it's actually hosted and managed by the organization as opposed to, maybe some individuals that are, passionate about the Power Platform. Center of Excellence, you generally have things in there like constant improvement and, maybe retros on projects and development things that you've done and what can we do to make this better next time, lesson learns and root cause analysis for a COE. The COE Starter Kit specifically that's called out there, as I said, that's a tool from Microsoft. It is available for GCC and GCC High. There are some considerations around what is available within that, but it's effectively a pre-configured solution that you would download. You would provision a new environment, a new Power Platform environment in your tenant, and that COE Starter Kit solution gets deployed into there. It's not just that easy though. There's configuration that goes with it. Somebody has to maintain it. There's multiple modules that you can choose to install with it. I believe most of those are available in GCC and GCC High, but there are some that are not. Obviously, there's some connectors, Power Platform connectors that are not. So overall, that COE Starter Kit, it can be deployed, it can be used, and it can be very valuable to get insights onto things like how many environments do we have? How many applications do we have? How many Power Automate workflows do we have? Who's using them? How often are they running? Start to look at things, for example, like if you find an application that's called Mike's application, and you have a Mike's application one and a Mike's application one test, there's probably a good chance that two of those are, they're bogus. They're not real. Somebody was doing some development and they're sitting up there taking capacity and costing your organization money. And a lot of times your IT department may not even know if these were built by citizen developers that they exist until you get that phone call and somebody says, hey, can you help me troubleshoot this? It doesn't work. And now you feel like you're on the hook. So that governance, I took a lot of time on that, but it's very important, determining what is your service model if you are the IT team that's supporting this within your organization. What is your service model to your organization, especially if you have subsidiaries? What is your service model to those other organizations or other sub businesses? And do you have some sort of a policy or a document that explains that and processes around it so that the people who are, requesting these applications that are requesting these applications and things know the proper process to go through. So a lot on that one topic, but very, very important. Hybrid development, it kind of flows into that. We did talk about a little bit, but governance, right? You want to put up guardrails. You want to be able to, if your organization is going to allow citizen development, which could be something as simple as somebody that maintains an Excel file or a SharePoint list to be able to put a Canvas app form in front of that to make something that's nice and easy to work with and mobile as opposed to interacting with a spreadsheet or a SharePoint list. Do you allow that? And if you do allow that, what are the boundaries and the security around that and the data around that? So things to keep in mind there with citizen development as well. One of the big ones, and for the folks that are further along in their Power Platform journey, I'm sure you're already doing approvals and workflows. For the people who aren't yet, you probably will get to that point. That's what the beauty of this platform. It's not just about entering data. I don't think there's probably anybody on this call that their job is to enter data, right? We either serve customers or we serve those who serve customers or something along those lines, managing matter management, and entering data is just something that we have to do in a tool. And so being able to automate some of this and route things automatically and configure approvals, it can, it can streamline that and save a lot of time and immediately start to see return on investment. A simple scenario there might be you have a customer and they land on your Power Pages portal and they can't find, documentation that they're looking for on a product that they own. And that documentation should not be just publicly available. They should only be able to have it because they already own that product. Whenever they request that, they're going to have to have logged in so that we know who they are and they requested this product. These workflows and approvals can be automatically configured to automatically direct those off to the specific department, based on just the type of document or product that they selected whenever they filled out that form. Um, we did talk a little bit about ensuring by the time the solution is complete, it still provides value. I see that, everywhere. This does give you the ability to still perform, development in a waterfall type manner. Maybe it's only a 3 or 4 week project, and you're just going to build the whole thing and then put it into UAT and then go to production. But I see a lot of times on larger projects where there's phased approaches or sprints, or there may be phased approaches with sprints in those phased approaches, and that this platform definitely lends itself well to that. And then lastly on this, the pre-built connectors. Connectors are effectively, if you're familiar with APIs, it's a way to connect one system or process to another system or process. There are over 1,000 of these connectors already available to be used. It's effectively the connector and then your credentials to be able to use that. Now, there's a lot more that goes along with connectors, right? That's probably out of the scope of this conversation, but it ties back into governance. It ties back into feature parity, what might be available in GCC or GCC high, your security posture around those. And then there's always the consideration for those premium connectors that may have costs associated with them. Matt, you can go ahead to the next slide, please. While Matt's moving over there, those connectors, you can also look at that if you don't find a connector that's already pre-built, you can always create custom connectors within the platform. And the platform has supported APIs, RESTful connections for years and years and years and years. Even though it is a point and click, low code, no code first platform, don't think that this is just a simple platform. It is a very extensible and expandable platform. So this Microsoft Power Platform at a glance, the different tools that are in it. For those of you who are already mature in this, you probably are familiar with these, but I am going to cover them just for those who aren't or may watch this later. I'm going to start with Power Apps, which is the second icon there in the middle, the purple one. That is what I think most of you will probably work within. Power Apps does include two types of apps. You have model-driven apps and canvas apps. Your model-driven apps are relying upon Dataverse, which is the green icon underneath that, which is effectively the enterprise-level database that all of this resides in. Dynamics 365, the green icon up on the top left, is effectively a pre-built model-driven app made by Microsoft. You pay additional licensing to access those additional features like sales, marketing, and service. Now, some of those features, again, feature parity with Dynamics 365, some of those features are not available in GCC or GCC high. There's a feature parity document. We can provide a link to that here at the end of this also, so you can go and take a look because it does show the roadmap. So I just looked, the most recent version is from October, but you want to keep up to date on that because it could become stale. Power Automate, the blue one in the middle, that's your workflow engine. There is a workflow engine within Power Apps. It's always been there since the days of Dynamics 365 and Dynamics CRM, but Power Automate does not require Power Apps in order to work. And you'll see that with a lot of these tools. You don't need Power Automate to use Power Apps. You don't need Power Apps to use Power Automate. You don't need Power BI to use any of them, and you don't need any of the rest of them to use Power BI. But they all work together seamlessly in this platform if you choose to do so. Power BI, while I was touching upon it, is your business analytics and business intelligence platform. Power BI can be consumed outside of the platform directly within Power BI, or you can embed Power BI reports directly in a model-driven Power App. Copilot Studio is your AI and chatbot. Those Copilot Studio agents that you create, they can be surfaced in different places. So they could be surfaced within an app, or they could be surfaced on a website. They could be surfaced inside of Teams. Power Pages, the last one on there, is effectively part of Power Apps. It's your public-facing website. So this was one of the main topics here was integration and being able to interact with your business partners and customers and have them be able to maybe fill out forms or submit data to you, or you provide a subset of data to them, but through security without exposing all of that data. And that's Power Pages. It has its own set of security within the platform. Data connectors, we did talk about. AI Builder, you see it there underneath Copilot Studio. There are templates out of the box that can be used there. Again, the caveat, some of those may not be available within GCC and GCC High and the connections to them. But a couple examples there are, for example, a business card reader, if anybody still uses business cards. Another one might be a document reader. So if you do have any scenarios where you're still receiving paper documents from business partners or customers, and you want to scan that to try to OCR that data, or at least check and see if there's data in those fields, you can use AI Builder for that. And then it interacts with the other Microsoft products. So Office 365, obviously Excel, Word, and Outlook. I use them all the time. Dynamics 365 and your model-driven Power Apps, they have the ability to export data to Excel and import data from Excel. There are other ways to export and import data, but those are probably the most commonly used. You can generate templated Word documents also out of your model-driven Power App, or Dynamics 365. So if you have scenarios there where you need to reach out to a business partner or customer, dear, insert first name here and provide a list of products. Maybe there's a product update, or an update to a product manual or something along those lines. You could do email templates as well, but if you have a scenario where you want to print out a paper and put it in an envelope and send it to them, the integration there with Word. And in Outlook, I see that a lot. There's actually an Outlook add-in connector that allows you to interact directly with certain features within Dynamics 365 and model-driven Power Apps directly through Outlook, especially around your contacts and your accounts that you're tracking. All right, Matt, if you want to go on to the next slide, please. This one's taking a second to load up because it has an animation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about on this one around no code, low code, and code first. Traditionally, there you go. Traditionally, we had developers, and maybe somebody just sat in a room and they coded all day long. They got the business requirements and they coded all day long. And with the Power Platform, this is no code and low code. I'll be straight up honest. Most projects we have, there's some sort of code, but it's minimal, and it's not code that you would think about from prior types of projects. Somebody's not sitting there writing JavaScript or .NET code like they used to. A lot of drag and drop experiences, like PowerPoint, that's straight up honest. With Power Automate, with the old, or with that as a new workflow engine, there is a lot of click and drag options there. You can still do branching and conditional logic and everything you expect to be able to do, and even spawning child workflows, based on Power Automate Cloud Flows, but with a graphical interface of click and drag. The same with the form building, the forms that we have within model-driven Power Apps and Dynamics 365. It really is click and drag to get those fields onto the form. In the older days, if we had a scenario where, say, for example, if person chooses yes to this option set, then we also want to provide a text field, and they need to provide a narrative of why they chose yes. But if they chose no, then we don't need that. Years ago, we would have needed to write JavaScript for that, but that's done with business processes nowadays, and that is part of still no code. Low code, you can still insert JavaScript into forms is still fairly lightweight if business processes don't meet that. And things like Excel formulas for functionality, that is mostly around Canvas apps. The big difference between model-driven apps and Canvas apps, I would say model-driven apps are they're all enterprise level apps, but if you're going to compare them just apples to apples and you haven't really looked at them yet, I would liken a model-driven Power App or Dynamics 365 to an enterprise level application to fill a need for something. It could be fleet management, it could be human resources application, it could be, product manufacturing, and you're tracking all of your products and price codes for each one, and do certain customers get different price codes, and do they have entitlements, and around customer service and things like that. Whereas a Canvas app may be very good for a point type of solution, where you're not providing a lot of information and not consuming a lot of information, like a time off request. All right, you just go to that Canvas app. It already knows who you are because you're logged in. It already knows who your manager is for the approval. You plug in the date and the time when you want it to start, the date and the time when you want your PTO to end, and how many hours it is, and you click submit, and that's it. But that may interact with a larger human resources system that then goes ahead and triggers a Power Automate workflow and sends that off to your manager and to human resources and things. So that functionality that you would see within a Canvas app scenario there would be a very good example of these Excel-like formulas in low code. Code first. Hey, we have developers on our team. I have developers on my team, and I will not profess to be smarter than most of them. They've been developing a long time. That is not my background. And yes, they can still do, hard code development like they've always done. This uses Microsoft .NET as the development platform for this. It is, if you've worked in them, if you haven't worked in them, they're called plugins. You effectively develop the code for this, and it gives you the ability to inject code into pre-operation and post-operation. So whenever, one of your coworkers clicks a button, if there's some code it needs to run, whenever they click it before some process happens, or like transactional operations, that code can be injected, and it is actually added into the solution with all of the rest of the Power Platform components, and that becomes part of your solution package. It goes from your development environment up into things like testing, QA, and staging, and production environments. So even though it's developed outside of the environment, it becomes part of your solution, and you can expand on other things there also with coding, with things like Azure Blob Storage for document storage, or if you're writing any old school SQL Server reporting services reports, you still have the ability to write SSRS reports and save those RDL files as part of the solution, and they just become another component. All right, Matt, let's move on to the next. So different app types, model-driven apps. Again, these can be rapidly created, and this is based on the Dataverse data model there listed. You may have heard of it, called Common Data Model, or Common Data Model, CDM, way back in the day before Microsoft renamed it to Dataverse. But effectively, there are a set of tables and fields and relationships and security model that it's already there. You already own it. Here we are. You already own it. You already own it with your licensing to Microsoft. Guaranteed, you're tracking customers or you're tracking business partners, and we call those accounts. And those accounts, guaranteed, you're tracking at least one person. And those accounts and those contacts, they're going to have phone numbers and names and email addresses. And you don't have to create all of those tables and all those fields and relationships and all the forms to go with them and views every time you create a new application. It's already there out of the box. Things like even build to and ship to addresses. You can create additional fields if you want. You can create additional relationships. An example, guaranteed one that's not in there. What is your favorite color? That is not a field that's out of the box, but you could create that. It could be a text field to allow people to type in there. It could be an option set, and you give them a list of colors to choose from. So that is basically your data model, your common data model or Dataverse data model, but the security model is all built into that as well. You just configure it. And there are a lot of security roles that are already there, especially if you're using Dynamics 365, not just creating a model-driven app from the beginning, because you have a lot of security rules that are already there, things based around like an account manager or customer service representative. Canvas apps, we did talk about these. Dynamics 365 apps, we talked about those as well. But I think if you're saying, hey Mike, why would I choose a model-driven app as opposed to Dynamics 365? There's obviously licensing implications there. The biggest thing I would say is, are you going to use sales, marketing, and service types of application? Are you doing help desk support? Are you marketing your products and tracking those marketing events? And are you tracking your products and price lists and things that go along with that? If the answer is yes, it probably doesn't make sense to rebuild all of that whenever you could go with Dynamics 365, consume the more expensive license for that and get all of that functionality on day one. Apps that can be embedded in one another, we'll just jump down there to the bottom. So yes, these all work together. Canvas apps, they can use SharePoint forms, but they can also use Excel and other types of data sources behind the scenes. Custom pages, you can create custom pages to embed in a Canvas app. You can create Canvas apps and then embed them in model-driven apps in Dynamics 365. You can create Power BI reports and consume them completely out of the side of the system. You could have a user who has a Power BI license and they never have any other Power Platform licenses and still do everything they need to in Power BI. But if you have, a Power Apps or Dynamics 365 license user, you can embed that data right in there, like as a dashboard. Same with chatbots, in apps, Power Pages, Teams. A very good scenario here for chatbot in Team is, I'm a new employee and I just want to know when are our holidays. I want to know the next holiday I have off. And I'm probably going to have to call HR. I'm going to land on a SharePoint or an intranet site, and there's just tons of information there. I don't even know where to start. Wouldn't it be nice if we had an HR chatbot, that's a Copilot Studio agent that's surfaced within Teams, and I can just go and ask it, hey, when's our next holiday? So I get a holiday instead of taking PTO, and then apps inside of Teams. All right, Matt, let's move on. So here's just a little high level on connectivity. I'm going to kind of jump over these because we intermingled this a little bit through the discussion, but this is effectively representing those connectors. If you're interested, we can get you the link off to the connector site also. Microsoft has a search right at the top of it. So if you're looking for, ServiceNow or Oracle or Google Sheets or whatever it might be, you can just do a search and you can find the connectors that are available, and then whether they're, available in GCC and GCC High. And then next one, please. So this is specifically for the technical people. If we have business users on here, you probably don't even care about this. This is the visual diagram of what we talked about with Dataverse, and it shows how all of this kind of goes together with the different layers, security, logic, data, storage, and integration, and all of the different, all the different connection points and where you'll find these different features within Dataverse and overall within Power Platform. All right, let's get into some real world business use cases. Microsoft Power Platform. I really like talking about these. I did, try to put some interspersed as we went through there, some color commentary, but without actually, what does this mean to me in my business? How do I use this? This is where you can start to think about these types of things. And I think this is where your community practice and community center of excellence might come into this. So one of these in particular is solution for manufacturing. So DIB, this is definitely a topic here. I see it in most commercial companies, some sort of product or service that's being manufactured or created and sold, and how do we even know what we're selling and where is it being sold? Where do we have issues? How do I know if there's been an update to that, or an update to a product manual that goes with that, or somebody bought an update? How do I know if they have that update so that they get the correct version of software that goes with it? or the correct documentation that goes along with it. And that's just from like fulfillment. I would say fulfillment side. What about the sales team that's trying to keep track of that from the sales side, and how many copies of that do they have, and where are they located, and is there some sort of maintenance agreement on that, and when does that end? And is there, some sort of additional cost that goes along with, maybe tiered entitlements like, silver versus gold level, and a lot of that functionality is there with Dynamics 365 around service marketing and service. But the one thing here, I want to talk about with this is being able to extend that and be able to create these real time KPIs. Matt, if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide here, and a scenario of what we did here. Creating these real-time manufacturing KPIs. Those KPIs could be surfaced directly within Dynamics 365 or Power Apps as as charts and graphs and data grids right there on the screen as a dashboard, and that's all out of the box. You can create those, click and drag, or maybe it's something a little more in depth, like Power BI, that is created and embedded in those dashboards. And then, the world's the limit whenever you start working with Power BI, although the reporting and dashboarding within Power Platform is very strong. But you could use this to update things like escalations and timely problem detection. If you do have tiered escalation, things like that, automatically routing these types of things to the person or the group of people who are going to handle them. So if you do have a Power Pages site set up and you do have products and you have a customer or business partner that has a problem with one of those, and they come and they log into their account, based on their account that they logged into and the actual company that they're associated with, we should already know, or at least if you build it that way, we should already know the products that they have and the versions of those products. And if you start to think about this, we'll talk about a little in IT service management, also the same thing. Well, what are all the descriptors of that? What kind of a device is it and what version is it? So this one in particular, that's going to be stored in Dataverse, but this one in particular, we're talking about, that data was already stored in Azure Data Lake. And so instead of having that data into place, there was an integration, included there to be able to consume that data from a different location, and that doesn't need to just necessarily be pulling data and displaying it. You may have a business use case there to have a one-way synchronization of that data, or bi-directional synchronization of data. So one scenario there around manufacturing and holistic view of what's going on from the point of manufacturing to the end, actually, of servicing the person who owns those devices. Matt, if you want to jump to the next one, please. I think the next one is around service. Yeah, service management. So this is IT service management, but I think in the end, everything is just matter management. It doesn't matter if you're tracking help desk tickets or whatever you're tracking, assets like laptops and computers or bags of tools or forklift machines, whatever it might be. It's matter management. We're tracking something, and that thing that we're tracking probably has other data, metadata, or data in other tables that are associated with this, and we need to track it, and we need to be able to manage it and hopefully be proactive. So this one in particular challenges IT service management, and this is kind of twofold. One is asset management. I will tell you, this came directly from me and my time working for the state agency before I came here to plan it. It was a law enforcement agency, and it had a lot of items there, whether they be surveillance cameras or just regular cameras, laptops, computers, and they were in a room, and a person who managed those to be able to sign them in and out had a lot of times had no idea what they were. And it was managed through a spreadsheet, and also a lot of times didn't know if it was in the storage room or if somebody had loaned it out or when it was coming back. And how do you manage that? So that's asset management. You could also think about asset management, maybe something like a vehicle. If you have fleet vehicles there, managing those and everything that goes along with that, with things like depreciation and fuel usage and maintenance. And is it at the shop? Is it available? Lack of automation. If somebody needs to request one of these items temporarily, maybe to take it to a conference, whether it's a loaner vehicle or maybe a laptop and a projector, how do they even request that? Do they pick up the phone and call somebody, or is there a form that they can automate? It automatically knows if it's in stock, assigns it to them, tells them where to pick it up, and then the asset manager or the asset supervisor just maintains that. And there's not as much, not as much interaction. It's much more streamlined. Integration and security risks. Obviously, some of these items, there's a lot of security and compliance that goes around these types of assets. Maybe these assets are security, or maybe these assets are, firewall devices within your agency. And how are you tracking those? And maybe even something like, how does somebody know when it's time to check to see if there's an update for software on those, or whenever maybe the maintenance period goes out. And these are all things that are easily able to be tracked in a service management. It doesn't have to be just help desk. So Matt, if you go to the next page, please. This is what we did for this one. One of the organizations that we worked with, they did not have a need for a full-blown customer service system, nor did they have the budget for that. And they also did not have one. Well, they did have one. They had ServiceNow. They had ServiceNow. Just straight up, they weren't able to pay for those licensing costs, and they wanted to be able to lower their licensing costs. They needed to have it done by a certain period of time before their renewal, and they were already using Power Platform. And the question there became, how do we do IT asset management, IT service management, wrap it all up into one application, and be able to track these, things like computers and laptops that we have within our agency, but still be able to have our end users self-serve. And so what we did there was a model-driven Power App. They didn't actually use Dynamics. A model-driven Power App that was scaled down to just the things that they needed. For service management, we built a Power Pages site with them that the users had to authenticate and log into. Whenever they authenticated and logged in, at that point, we already knew who they were in the system, and we knew which devices were assigned to them, and we did an integration with Purview to pull that information already about the devices, so we knew what the processor was and how much RAM was in it, when it went into service, the date that the warranty expired, all of that good information. And the person who was taking that call didn't have to ask any of that, right? They could confirm it, but we already knew all of that. And that allowed them to also be proactive for things like workflows, that maybe a workflow runs that triggers and it says, whenever any of these values changes, put this on an exception report. So maybe an example there is, this computer used to have 16 gig of memory in it, and now it only has 8 gig of memory in it, right? We can be proactive there. Does somebody crack the case open and steal the memory? Probably not. It was probably a memory stick that went bad, right? That's going to result in a help desk call. But if you already know it, you can be proactive. At very high level, we built a whole lot more than that for them. But I believe there was even a Canvas app on that one, so that if it was somebody who was actually taking like I don't want to say a dispatcher, a customer service rep who was taking these calls and working on them, whether it was something that was broken or maybe it was a request for a new project that might span a project. It's not a break fix. That they would still be able to interact with the system on their phone or on their tablet. And that's one thing I did not cover, but all of these screens that you would have based on this platform, they're responsive design. So bring your own browser, bring your own screen size. They automatically resize for you. And then obviously security and compliance around this. It's kind of underlying in everything. There is a concept in Dataverse with the security model of business units, which generally at a very high level, it's much more complex than this, but at a high level, it determines what data you can get to. And then there are security roles which determine what you can do with that data. So if you have, maybe a marketing department and a sales department, and they don't share all data, you could create a business unit structure where there is a marketing department and a sales department. And maybe in that sales department, you have East Coast and West Coast, and East Coast and West Coast don't really interact, but there's a director maybe at the top level that manages all of that, and they need to see down into all of it. That would be your business unit structure, and then your security rules to control that. And you can take that security the whole way down even to field level security, so you can control in those specific tables. Even if I can get to the table and I can create records in there and I can modify records and read records in there, maybe there's certain fields that should be blocked that I can't see unless I'm in a certain security role. So a lot of security already baked in, and there are a lot of security rules that are already there that you just find one that's close to what you need, make a copy of it, and then modify it from that point. There is also security externally for Power Pages. And that's called web roles. So if you look into this, or if you're familiar with it already, you'll see words out there like business unit security roles. Those are internal, and then web roles, which is for your external users. Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. So challenges in project and financial management. Again, this is mostly matter management, just like I talked about. I doubt that you're working with grants, but we have state agency that works with grants, and they're managing everything, from soup to nuts in that, including who gets the grants, how they're dispersed, and the money's associated. But even though you're not handling grants, there's one thing here, and the reason why we kept this in here is the compliance around that, right? We know you're dealing with compliance issues and security issues. You don't want to get to a point where you've done all of this work and these manual processes, and then realize that if compliance was followed two days ago or 3 weeks ago, you wouldn't have been at this point anyway. And so, even though a completely different scenario, to call that out, the compliance, compliance and security that can be configured in these different applications and workflows. And then Matt, if you go to the next one, please. I think we're getting close here to the end. Yeah, financial management. Again, you may or may not be working in that. That may or may not even tie into Power Apps. You may already have an ERP, and possibly you just want to use Power BI to get greater insights into places where your ERP may be lacking, or maybe you want to integrate your Power Apps or Dynamics 365 with an existing ERP, whether that's a Microsoft ERP or not. There are other flavors of Dynamics that are ERP systems, and be able to automate some of this data and real-time financials around that. And then go ahead, Matt, please. All right. So some of the next items on here are AI powered future for the DIB. So some of the things I would see here, around manufacturing optimization, obviously AI driven predictive analytics. I think that's going to be number one. Even some of the easiest and probably I would say most approachable ways here is creating these new applications for you. A year or so ago, whenever you go to create a new application, you would just start creating a new application. The home screen now, when you create a new application, is you can still do that, but it gives you options. Through AI. Do you want to create this based off of a data source? Do you want to create this based off of a mock-up? You can literally put a mock-up into the screen. It'll try to read it and start trying to create your data and relationships for you. So there are 3 or 4 different types of AI-driven options there just for creating applications, and the same for workflows and things like AI Builder and Copilot Studio. The templates that are already there, again with the caveat, the ones that are available within GCC, and the connections that are available in GCC and GCC High. And then for partner and external collaboration as well around this, this is mostly around Power Pages. I would say for external, but AI there being how does somebody interact with that initially whenever they come to your, to your Power Pages site or to your existing organization website? Is there a chat bot there? Is there something that they can interact with and start getting information without digging into, the navigation items? And that's where AI power comes in there with Copilot Studio. All
Well,
right,
thanks,
Matt.
Mike. I
So,
think we're near
okay.
the end of the technical slides here. We've got one more poll
Yep.
question pop up here, which is after we've gone through this here for about 50 minutes, the technical aspects, which area Power Platform value seems most important to your organization right now? We'll wait for those answers in the chat. We'll jump over to if we've got any questions. At this point, Casey, I'll have you turn the recording off. And if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute.